The Auction of Fate. The wind carried dust across the small frontier town, whipping through the wooden stalls and clattering against the auction barn doors. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of hay, sweat, and anticipation. Clara Hayes stood at the edge of the crowded floor, her hand pressed protectively over her swollen belly. The last vestiges of her late husband's life, furniture, linens, even the family's modest home, were lined up on display to be sold to the highest bidder. She kept her gaze low, aware of every whisper and scrutinizing glance from the townsfolk. Jack Callahan leaned against a post, boots dusty and spurs jingling faintly as he surveyed the scene. The cowboy was a figure of quiet strength, his rugged frame and weathered face speaking of countless lonely nights on the plains. He did not mingle or exchange pleasantries. Instead, his eyes were fixed on the widow. Something about her, her stoic composure, the tension in her shoulders, the faint tremor in her hands, stirred a curiosity he could not ignore. The auctioneer's gavel hit the stand, echoing through the barn. "Next lot," he barked. Clara's modest wooden chest was brought forward, its scratched surface and simple carvings telling of better days long past. The crowd murmured, many anticipating low bids, eager to claim what little the widow could offer. Clara's heart pounded. She had warned herself not to hope for kindness, not to imagine any gesture beyond necessity. Yet as Jack's dark eyes met hers for the first time, a flicker of something, curiosity, caution, perhaps recognition, passed between them. "You may regret this," she muttered under her breath. A warning meant more for him than for herself. Jack's lips curved into a faint, inscrutable smile. He stepped forward when the gavel lifted again. "I bid," he said quietly, voice calm but carrying weight. The crowd tensed. Few had seen the loner show interest in anything beyond his own affairs. Clara's eyes widened. Her chest tightened. Not in hope, not yet, but in the recognition that this man might change everything. The auctioneer hesitated, scanning the room. "Do I hear more?" he called. Some townsfolk whispered about Jack, speculating on his intentions, shaking heads in disbelief. The widow felt their judgment like daggers against her ribs, but her attention never left the man before her. Jack raised his hand slightly, confirming his bid, and the gavel fell again. The lot was his. Clara's lips pressed into a thin line. Relief and apprehension warred within her. "You may regret this," she repeated, more firmly this time, meeting Jack's gaze directly. She saw the faint flicker of understanding, or perhaps defiance, there, and for a moment, the crowd faded from view. After the auction, Jack followed Clara and her 2 children, Sammy, 8, cautious and observant, and Lily, 5, innocent and trusting, back to the small house at the edge of town. The children were wary, clinging to their mother's skirts, peering at the stranger with wide eyes. Jack's expression softened slightly as he knelt to meet them at eye level. "I'm not here to hurt you," he said simply, his voice steady, carrying an unusual gentleness. Clara's heart twisted. She wanted to believe him, yet her mind spun with doubt. How could a man like him, an outsider, a cowboy whose reputation preceded him, truly care for her and her children? The town would talk, and the shadows of judgment would follow her for years if she let her guard down. Still, as she watched Jack lift a bundle of blankets into the house without complaint, she felt an uncharacteristic spark of hope. Inside, the house smelled of dust and disuse, but it was hers, and for now, it would suffice. Jack moved with purpose, stacking firewood, checking the creaking doors, and listening to Clara's cautious instructions. Sammy watched from the corner, suspicion etched on his small face, while Lily followed Jack's every move, giggling softly at his awkward attempts to lift the smallest chairs. By nightfall, the tension had shifted slightly. Jack sat outside by the flickering light of a lantern, polishing his boots, while Clara tended to the children's bedtime routine. Their eyes met across the dim yard, silent questions passing between them. He had entered her life quietly, without demand, yet with an undeniable weight. She wondered if she could trust him, if she could let him step past the boundaries she had erected around her heart. The wind whispered through the trees as the barn and the auction faded into memory. Clara knew one thing. Life had changed in a single day, and though uncertainty loomed, curiosity, caution, and an unspoken attraction now wove a fragile thread between them. She did not yet know the depth of temptation or the challenges that awaited, but the first chapter of their story had begun, and neither could turn back, building walls and bridges. The morning sun spilled golden light over the small homestead, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. Clara moved quietly through the kitchen, preparing porridge for Sammy and Lily. The children's laughter echoed faintly, a reminder of fleeting innocence amidst uncertainty. Jack was already outside, tending the fence, his broad shoulders moving with practiced precision. The rhythm of his labor spoke of solitude and resilience, qualities Clara could neither dismiss nor fully trust. Sammy watched Jack from the window, suspicion etched deep into his young face. "Mom," he whispered, tugging at her apron, "do you think he's really here to help? Or just to take what's ours?" Clara's eyes softened but remained cautious. "He helped us yesterday," she said carefully, "but we must watch and decide for ourselves if he belongs here." Jack's presence was a study in contradictions, capable and commanding, yet patient and quiet. He repaired broken fence posts without complaint, shifted heavy logs for firewood, and even coaxed Lily to help him sweep the porch. Every movement was deliberate, measured, as though he were proving something not just to Clara, but to himself. By midday, Clara found herself observing him more than she wished. He carried himself with a confidence that bordered on arrogance, yet there was an unmistakable gentleness in the way he interacted with her children. Lily ran to him with a fallen doll, and Jack knelt to lift her up, laughter escaping in a rare, unguarded moment. Clara felt an unfamiliar warmth in her chest, quickly tempered by the caution she had cultivated for months. The afternoon brought the townsfolk's subtle intrusion. Neighbors arrived under the pretense of casual greetings, their conversations laced with judgment. Rumors about Jack's arrival and his intentions with a widowed, pregnant woman swirled quietly, reaching Clara's ears in the form of pointed questions and whispered speculation. She stiffened with every comment, aware of how quickly reputation could fracture in a town built on gossip. Jack, seemingly unfazed, moved among the crowd with ease, his calm demeanor contrasting sharply with the tension he left in his wake. In the privacy of the kitchen, Clara confronted the tension she could not escape. "You understand what people will say if you stay here?" she asked quietly, voice steady but edged with worry. Jack paused, looking up from the kettle he was stirring. "I know," he replied, eyes meeting hers without hesitation. "And I don't care what they think. I came here for more than the property, and it seems we both have reasons for needing each other." The words lingered between them, weighted with implication. Clara turned away, pressing her lips together to quell an unbidden rush of emotions. Her late husband's memory pressed upon her, a quiet reminder that she must not let desire override judgment. Yet Jack's presence stirred feelings she had long buried: loneliness, longing, and a flicker of forbidden attraction. Sammy, ever watchful, approached Jack with cautious curiosity. "Are you going to stay long?" he asked, voice small but pointed. Jack smiled faintly, crouching to meet the boy's eyes. "As long as you and Lily allow me," he said gently, a subtle challenge in his tone. The boy's lips pursed, weighing the honesty in Jack's voice against his instincts. Clara watched silently, recognizing the slow but undeniable bridging of trust. Evening arrived with a muted glow, the horizon painted in soft hues of amber and violet. Jack and Clara worked side by side, mending broken shutters and securing the small garden fence. The physical closeness was deliberate yet restrained, each movement heavy with unspoken tension. Their hands brushed accidentally, and the brief contact sent a ripple of awareness through both, a fleeting reminder that desire existed beneath their measured interactions. Later, as the children were tucked in, Jack lingered on the porch, gazing at the fading light. Clara joined him, carrying a lantern that cast warm, dancing shadows across the wooden planks. They spoke in quiet tones, exchanging stories of past hardships, losses, and fleeting moments of joy. Each word drew them closer, revealing vulnerabilities that neither had expected to share so soon. By nightfall, Clara realized that trust, fragile and tentative, had begun to form. Jack was no longer simply a mysterious stranger. He was a presence that challenged her boundaries, tested her moral compass, and stirred a longing she struggled to suppress. Yet as she watched him return to the stables to tend his horse, she whispered to herself, "You may regret this," unsure whether she referred to him or to the dangerous pull of her own heart. The wind rose again outside, whispering through the trees, carrying with it a promise of challenges yet to come. The day had ended with tentative bridges built and invisible walls still standing, leaving both Clara and Jack poised on the edge of possibilities neither fully understood. Shadows of temptation. The morning mist clung to the edges of the small homestead, curling around the fence posts and the grazing horses. Clara moved briskly through the yard, carrying water to the garden while keeping an eye on the children. Sammy and Lily ran ahead, laughter and squeals mingling with the crisp air, but Clara's thoughts remained heavy. Since Jack's arrival, the rhythm of their lives had shifted, and with it, the quiet tension that threaded through her days. Jack had taken to arriving before dawn, repairing fences, tending the animals, and preparing the land for the coming season. His work was tireless, yet there was a subtle intensity in the way he moved, a controlled energy that suggested a man both disciplined and restless. Clara watched him from the porch, her hand tightening around the bucket handle. Every glance, every accidental brush of his sleeve against hers sent an unwelcome warmth through her chest. She told herself it was simply gratitude, a reaction to his help, yet the truth gnawed at her. The town's murmurs had grown louder. Neighbors' visits were now laced with thinly veiled commentary. "So, Jack's staying for more than just the farm, I hear." Clara felt her cheeks flush, anger and embarrassment mingling. "They don't understand," she muttered to herself. "They never will." Jack, meanwhile, seemed unfazed by the whispers, focused entirely on practical matters. Yet even in his composure, she sensed a subtle awareness of the scrutiny, a challenge that made her pulse quicken. Midday brought an unplanned confrontation. Ethan Blackwood, the wealthy rancher who had long observed the unfolding situation with interest, appeared at the gate. His smile was sharp, calculated. "Quite the arrangement you have here," he said smoothly, glancing between Clara and Jack. "I hope it's more than convenience and labor, Mrs. Hayes." Clara's fingers clenched instinctively, while Sammy stepped protectively forward. Lily hid behind her mother's skirts, wide-eyed. Jack's response was measured, calm yet firm. "We're managing what we need to manage. That's all." The tension in the air was palpable. Ethan's smirk faltered slightly, and he tipped his hat, retreating with a parting warning. "Be careful. Appearances matter more than you know." Clara exhaled, tension leaving her in shallow bursts, but the encounter left a subtle unease. The afternoon sun climbed high, painting golden streaks across the barn. Clara found herself inside, scrubbing floors while Jack repaired the roof above. A sudden gust sent a ladder clattering, and Jack lunged instinctively, steadying the structure and brushing against her shoulder. The proximity was electric, and Clara froze, heart hammering. For a fleeting moment, desire clashed with reason, warning her of the danger in her own feelings. Jack's gaze met hers briefly, quiet but intense. There was a pause, a silent acknowledgement of the temptation that neither wanted to address directly. "Be careful," he said softly, more murmur than a warning. The words held a weight that made Clara step back, grounding herself in propriety and in her sense of duty to her children. That evening, the children asleep and the house bathed in lantern light, Clara allowed herself a rare moment of reflection. Jack sat across the room, polishing tools by the fire, the shadows playing across his face. She admired his patience, his strength, and the gentle attentiveness he showed her children. Yet, beneath the admiration lay a gnawing unease. Could she allow herself to be drawn closer, even emotionally, without losing control? Sammy's voice broke the quiet, muffled from his bed. "Mom, he really likes you, doesn't he?" Clara smiled faintly, brushing back his hair. "I think he cares," she admitted softly, though her heart beat with warning. "But care and love, they aren't the same thing yet. We must be cautious." Lily stirred, murmuring sleepily, and Clara's chest tightened. Protecting these children was her first priority, yet she could not deny the human need for companionship, a longing she had tried to suppress for months. The night deepened, and Jack remained outside, tending the animals under the pale glow of the moon. Clara watched from the window, a mixture of admiration and apprehension coiling in her chest. The moral line hovered just out of reach, an invisible boundary neither dared cross fully, yet both circled with tentative steps. Desire lingered, patient and persistent, threading through their daily routines like an unspoken challenge. By the time Clara extinguished the last lantern, the homestead was quiet. The children slept, shadows stretched long across the floorboards, and the wind whispered through the trees. Clara knew the tension between herself and Jack would not dissipate. It would grow, quietly, relentlessly. She pressed a hand to her belly, feeling the life inside her, a reminder of the responsibilities tethering her heart. Yet she could not ignore the pull, the magnetic thread that tied her gaze to Jack, even in fleeting glances. The chapter closed with Clara standing by the window, eyes fixed on the cowboy moving beneath the moonlight. Temptation, desire, and moral restraint coexisted uneasily, setting the stage for choices that could redefine every boundary she had set. The night held a promise of storms yet to come, both within and around them, leaving the story poised on the edge of temptation. Choices and horizons. The first light of dawn stretched across the homestead, casting long shadows that intertwined with the soft glow of morning mist. Clara moved quietly through the kitchen, the rhythmic scrape of her spoon against the bowl a comfort in the stillness. Jack had been awake before her, tending to the barn animals, his silhouette framed by the golden horizon. There was a familiarity now between them, a silent understanding built from days of labor, conversation, and careful observation. Clara watched him for a long moment. The tension of the previous days, the whispered judgments, the near moments of temptation, the gnawing questions of propriety, had not disappeared, but it had softened. She acknowledged the pull she felt toward him, and more importantly, the restraint he had consistently shown. He respected her boundaries, yet his presence brought warmth, companionship, and a subtle promise of something deeper. Sammy appeared first, rubbing sleep from his eyes. "Morning," he said cautiously, glancing at Jack, who smiled warmly in return. Lily followed, clinging to Clara's skirt, her tiny hand waving at the cowboy. Jack knelt, lifting her gently. "Good morning, Princess," he murmured. Clara's chest tightened at the tenderness, aware of how easily he had become woven into the fabric of their lives. After breakfast, Clara and Jack walked along the perimeter of the property, inspecting the fence lines. Their conversation was light but meaningful, interlaced with laughter, shared memories of past hardships, and quiet acknowledgments of the bond forming between them. Clara felt the tension ease slightly, replaced with a growing sense of trust. For the first time in months, she allowed herself to imagine a future that included more than survival, one with companionship and care. Ethan Blackwood appeared later in the day, arriving in his polished carriage, a reminder of the outside world and the scrutiny it offered. He regarded Clara with a mixture of disdain and calculation. "Seems you've made quite the choice," he said smoothly, eyes flicking toward Jack. "I hope it lasts for your sake." Clara met his gaze steadily, refusing to yield. "We've made our choice," she said firmly, her voice quiet but unwavering. Jack's presence at her side reinforced her conviction. The silent strength of his support left no room for intimidation. The afternoon brought a minor crisis, a loose gate threatening to release the horses. Jack acted swiftly, steadying the animals while Clara worked alongside him. The danger was brief, but it crystallized a deeper truth. Jack's care was not performative. It was genuine. He protected them, not out of obligation, but out of loyalty and quiet affection. Clara's heart swelled with the recognition of this, her previous doubts tempered by actions rather than words. As evening settled, the children played under the fading light, laughter mingling with the soft whistle of the wind. Clara and Jack sat on the porch, sharing a quiet moment. Their hands brushed, not with urgency, but with deliberate connection, a promise of mutual respect and care. Clara allowed herself a smile, the kind that reached her eyes, feeling a lightness she had long forgotten. "We've weathered a lot in just a few days," Jack said softly, his gaze fixed on the horizon. "And there's still more to come. But I want you to know, whatever happens, I'll be here. For you. And for them." Clara's throat tightened, the weight of the past months pressing against her chest. Yet in that moment, she chose hope over fear, trust over hesitation. Night fell with stars scattered across the velvet sky. The homestead was quiet, save for the soft breathing of sleeping children and the occasional rustle of nocturnal animals. Clara lingered by the window, watching Jack secure the barn, his silhouette a steady presence against the darkness. She pressed a hand to her belly, feeling the small life within her, and understood that protection, care, and love could coexist without betrayal. Finally, she stepped outside, joining him under the silver glow of moonlight. Their eyes met, and the unspoken understanding between them needed no words. A gentle embrace followed, tentative but filled with intention. It was not a surrender to recklessness, but a promise to navigate desire with respect and honor. The night wind whispered through the trees, carrying with it a sense of possibility, of life rebuilt and hearts opened. Clara knew there would be challenges ahead, rumors to silence, responsibilities to uphold, and emotions to balance. But the first step had been taken. Trust had been earned, boundaries respected, and love allowed to grow without compromise. Jack remained a steady presence at her side, the lonely cowboy no longer alone, and Clara found courage to embrace the future. The chapter ended not with finality, but with a horizon wide and inviting, a promise of days filled with laughter, care, and a delicate balance of desire and morality. For the first time in months, the homestead felt whole, and Clara allowed herself to believe that they could face whatever came next, together.